Imagine this. What if the man society calls lonely is actually the most powerful person in the room? What if silence, not noise, is the real sign of strength? And what if the very thing you've been taught to fear, being alone, is actually your greatest advantage? Let me paint a picture for you. There's a man sitting quietly in a corner of a bustling coffee shop. Around him, the world is in fast forward. Everyone else is glued to their phones scrolling, liking, posting, chasing the next hit of dopamine from total strangers online. Couples are staging picture-perfect selfies. Groups are deep in gossip. The solo wanderers? They're swiping through dating apps like it's a race against time. But this man, he's still. He has earbuds in not for music or mindless entertainment, but for an audiobook on ancient philosophy. While the world numbs itself with TikTok, he's sharpening his mind with Marcus Aurelius and Nietzsche. He's not lonely. He's not awkward. He's not waiting for someone to talk to him. He's centered. He's grounded. He's content. And that makes him the most dangerous person in the room. But why? Why would a man who is genuinely at peace with himself, who doesn't seek approval, who doesn't need attention, who's comfortable sitting alone with his thoughts, why would that type of man make people uncomfortable? Here's where it gets interesting. We've all been fed a lie, one so deeply embedded in our culture that we rarely question it. The lie is this: to be happy, you must be surrounded by people. To be alone is to be broken, to be sad, to be incomplete. But let's rip off the mask. Every advertisement you see, every dating app you scroll, every influencer you follow, even every self-help guru you listen to, they all thrive on one basic assumption: that you are not enough on your own. You need a soulmate, you need friends, you need a tribe. Without them, you're nothing. But what if it's all wrong? What if that man sitting by himself, completely content, completely still, isn't missing anything? What if he actually represents something so unsettling to the system that we've labeled him as weird, antisocial, or lost, just to protect the lie? Here's the truth. Society doesn't fear the man who can't be alone. It fears the man who doesn't need anyone at all. Because when a man learns how to sit with his own thoughts, when he no longer runs from silence, when solitude becomes a source of strength, not fear, he becomes unshakable. And when philosophy becomes his armor, something profound happens. Let me introduce you to two men centuries apart who embodied this truth: Marcus Aurelius and Friedrich Nietzsche. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of the Roman Empire, arguably the most powerful man of his time, didn't spend his nights in indulgence. He spent them alone, writing deeply personal reflections in his journal. One of his most powerful lines: "All cruelty springs from weakness." He could command armies. He could have anything or anyone. And yet, his true power came from questioning himself in silence. Nietzsche, often misunderstood and later declared mad, said something that echoes through time: the individual has always had to struggle not to be overwhelmed by the tribe. And that's where we begin to understand the real weight of solitude. Stay with me, because in the next part, we'll explore how this mindset doesn't just liberate you, but shields you from manipulation, noise, and emotional chaos. So now that we've seen how solitude shaped men like Marcus Aurelius and Nietzsche, let's go even deeper. Because here's the truth society doesn't want you to realize: the person who can sit in silence is the person who can think for themselves. And thinking for yourself, that's one of the most dangerous acts in today's world. Let's break it down. What exactly is going on in the mind of someone who chooses solitude, not out of sadness or rejection, but from a place of strength? First, they've broken free from the drug everyone else is addicted to: approval. While most people are chasing likes, posting selfies, fishing for comments, or living for validation from others, this kind of person has found something far more powerful: self-respect. And not the kind that depends on numbers or praise. This is internal, silent, and unshakable. Second, they've developed a rare ability: they can sit with discomfort. You ever notice how quickly people grab their phones when they're alone? It takes less than 5 minutes for most to escape into distraction. Why? Because silence is a mirror. And when you stare into it, you start to see your real self. That's terrifying for most people, but not for the dangerous loner. He's had those sleepless 3 a.m. talks with himself. He's revisited his regrets, replayed his fears, sat with his insecurities, and instead of running, he stayed. He's befriended his own darkness. And that's why he's stronger than most. Third, and this is a big one, he cannot be manipulated. When you no longer depend on others for validation, you also strip away their power to control you. You're immune to the fear of rejection. You can't be bought with clout or applause. And the threat of being unpopular? It just doesn't work anymore. This is the core of what Marcus Aurelius practiced: strength through solitude. Every night, he did something almost nobody today would think to do. He sat down quietly and wrote, not for an audience, not for attention, but for himself. He reflected on his desires, his fears, his actions. He asked himself tough questions. What did I want today that I didn't need? What did I fear that was outside of my control? Where did I seek approval in ways that compromised who I am? This wasn't passive journaling. This was mental training. He was building inner armor layer by layer, word by word. Marcus understood something timeless. The man who knows himself deeply cannot be fooled by shallow gains. If you've already confronted your own insecurities, then someone else trying to poke at them just becomes noise. When you've sat in silence and faced your own reflection, no one else's opinion can shake you. Their manipulation becomes obvious. Their approval becomes meaningless. Their games become boring. You become dangerous because you become free. But that's not all. There's another level to this mental armor, and it's something Friedrich Nietzsche understood in a way few ever have. Let's explore that next. Because once you understand what Nietzsche discovered, you'll never look at solitude or society the same way again. So we've just uncovered how true freedom begins when you can no longer be manipulated. But Nietzsche pushed that idea even further, and what he said next challenges the very foundation of how most people live their lives. He warned of something society fears more than rebellion: the individual who creates their own values. According to Nietzsche, the truly dangerous man isn't loud or violent. He's not someone who seeks to destroy from the outside. He's the man who quietly rejects the moral code handed down to him, the one who stops accepting beliefs just because that's how it's always been. Most people walk through life wearing a costume of inherited values. They believe what their parents believed. They live how their friends live. They follow the rules society gave them without ever questioning who wrote them. But the man who embraces solitude, he begins asking uncomfortable questions. Why do I believe this? Who benefits from me believing this? What would I choose to believe if I had to start completely from scratch? These questions are like fire. Once they ignite, the illusion burns away. You stop being predictable. You stop being easy to manipulate. You stop being the ideal consumer who buys what he's told, votes how he's told, and follows the script without thinking. This is where solitude becomes a threat to the system, because it's no longer just about being alone, it's about waking up, and that leads us to a massive confusion in today's world. The confusion between loneliness and solitude. Let's get brutally honest. Loneliness is a feeling of emptiness. It's the belief that something's missing inside you, and you need others to fill it. It's longing, craving, a silent desperation. But solitude is the exact opposite. Solitude is wholeness. It's choosing to spend time with yourself and loving that time. It's the ability to sit in silence, without distractions, and still feel at peace. Not needing noise, not needing praise, not needing people. The problem is society has blurred the lines between these two. Why? Because that confusion serves a purpose. A lonely person will spend money to feel better. They'll buy things they don't need, chase status symbols, and consume endlessly. They're easier to sell to, easier to influence, easier to distract. But the person who's found joy in solitude, they're not buying, they're not chasing, they're not looking outside, they're thinking inward. And thinking people don't make good followers. They question, they resist, they choose. That's why thinkers are dangerous. Because systems built on mindless conformity don't survive when people start thinking for themselves. And through my study of men like Marcus Aurelius and Nietzsche, I've uncovered something powerful. There are 4 pillars that make solitude not just powerful but dangerous. Let's begin with the first. 1-1. Radical self-honesty. The dangerous loner doesn't sugarcoat the truth, not even to himself. He's brutally honest about what drives him, what scares him, and what he truly wants. He doesn't lie to make himself feel better. He faces reality like a warrior facing the battlefield head-on and clear-eyed. Why is that dangerous? Because someone who's honest with themselves can't be easily deceived by others. They can smell manipulation. They can see through shallow charm, fake kindness, and performative virtue. They don't fall for masks because they've already faced their own. And that brings us to the next pillar. One that has everything to do with how you define value in a world that wants to define it for you. Let's explore that in the next part. So after radical self-honesty, what comes next? It's the ability to live by your own values shaped by reason and experience, not handed down by society. This is the second pillar, value independence. People often confuse this with being rebellious or immoral. But the truth is, those who build their morality from the inside out are often more ethical than the average person. They don't blindly follow tradition. They don't do what's expected just because it's always been done that way. Instead, they live by principles they've earned through thinking, questioning, and living. And that makes them dangerous. Because if your sense of right and wrong comes from within, then shame doesn't work on you. Guilt doesn't control you. Social judgment? It slides right off. You don't follow the crowd, you follow your conscience. Even when it's hard. Even when it costs you something. That brings us to the third pillar, emotional self-sufficiency. This is the rarest strength in the modern world. The ability to regulate your own emotions, to find peace inside yourself instead of chasing it through others. People like this don't need constant reassurance. They don't depend on approval, attention, or external love to feel good. They've become their own source of calm, of clarity, of power. And that's exactly why they can't be emotionally manipulated. You can't guilt them into submission. You can't shame them into obedience. You can't dangle love or acceptance like a reward. They've already accepted themselves. The fourth and final pillar is intellectual courage. This is what sets thinkers apart from followers. Dangerous individuals are willing to explore thoughts most people avoid. They question beliefs that others cling to for comfort. They follow evidence, not popularity. And even when their conclusions are uncomfortable, even when they go against the grain, they don't stay silent. Why? Because truth matters more than approval. They speak truths that others are too afraid to admit. And yes, it costs them. Sometimes deeply, but they speak anyway. And now, let's be honest, this path, it's not easy. There's a price for choosing to live this way. People won't always understand you. Some will call you antisocial. Others will label you arrogant or distant. They'll try to make your independence seem like a flaw. They'll misinterpret your solitude as sadness. At times, you'll feel isolated not because you're lonely, but because you're no longer vibrating at the same frequency as the crowd. Look around and realize most people aren't even thinking. They're reacting, performing, obeying. You'll lose relationships. Some people are only connected to you through your neediness. When that need disappears, they disappear too. Even family may grow uncomfortable. Not because you've changed in a bad way, but because your growth threatens the status quo. And society? It will constantly try to drag you back into the herd. You'll be nudged, sometimes subtly, sometimes aggressively, to be more normal, more social, more like everyone else. But here's the hard truth. The price of conformity is your soul. And this is exactly why self-sufficient people are seen as a threat. Because when you stop needing, stop craving, stop chasing, you stop being easy to control. And next, we're going to uncover the core reason this kind of inner freedom doesn't just make you powerful. It shakes the foundation of how our entire economy operates. Let's dive into that now. So, now you see why society feels threatened by the self-sufficient. Because once you stop conforming, you stop buying into everything, literally and metaphorically. Let's break that down. Economically, the system needs you to feel incomplete. It needs you to want more, to chase more, to buy things you don't need in order to impress people you don't even like. But when a person becomes content within themselves, they stop trying to fill the void with stuff. They don't need the newest trend, the flashiest car, or the status symbol of the week. And when you don't consume as expected, you become a problem. Why? Because you're not feeding the machine. You're not a good little customer anymore. Socially, it's even more subtle. Social hierarchies are built on comparison. They require people to care deeply about where they stand. Status only exists if people believe in it. But if you don't care who's above or below you, if you refuse to play the game, then the whole ladder starts to wobble. You become unpredictable. You don't respond to shame. You're immune to praise. And that makes you unmanageable in a world that thrives on social control. Politically, it's no different. Modern democracies often rely on groupthink, on people who vote, speak, and act according to popular opinion. But when you start thinking for yourself, when you stop being influenced by the loudest voice in the room, you've also become harder to manipulate. You don't fall for slogans. You don't choose sides out of fear. You're independent, and that makes you inconvenient. Psychologically, your freedom becomes a mirror. Your independence quietly exposes others' dependence. Your contentment highlights their restlessness. Your inner peace, it makes their inner chaos louder. And that's why you're feared, not because you're loud, but because you're free. So how do you get there? How do you build the kind of solitude that doesn't isolate you but liberates you? Let's talk about how to apply this ancient wisdom to modern life. Start small. Begin by spending short moments alone without distractions. No phone, no music, no podcasts, just you and your thoughts. 10 minutes a day. That's all you need at first. It'll feel uncomfortable, but that's the point. You're building mental muscle. Practice the evening review, like Marcus Aurelius once did. Each night, ask yourself, what did I do well today? What did I struggle with? What did I learn about myself? It's not just reflection, it's training. You're learning to understand your own mind, not through noise, but through silence. Question your beliefs just like Nietzsche encouraged. Why do you believe what you believe? Would you still believe it if no one else did? Strip away the cultural programming. Build your values from reason, not pressure. Learn to enjoy your own company. Read, walk, think, create. Don't wait for someone else to join you. Fill your own time. Build your own world inside. And here's the hardest part: stop seeking validation. Stop checking likes. Stop waiting for comments. Stop letting the world decide how valuable you are. Find that value within yourself. Because when you do, something amazing happens. The paradox of solitude reveals itself. The person who doesn't need others, who's complete on their own, becomes the one others are most drawn to. Not because they're trying to impress, not because they're performing, but because real strength is magnetic. Peace is attractive. Confidence, true confidence, radiates without saying a word. But here's the key: you're not doing it to attract. You're doing it because it's the right way to live. The admiration? That's just a side effect. So where does that leave us? In the final part of this journey, we'll tie everything together and look at what it truly means to become dangerous, not with violence or ego, but with calm, silent, stoic strength. Let's finish strong. So now you understand what it truly means to live with dangerous solitude. A life where you don't need others to feel whole. And where everything you give or build comes from strength, not scarcity. This is where life begins to transform. Relationships improve not because you cling to them, but because you choose them freely. When you're with someone because you want to be, not because you fear being alone, the connection becomes stronger, healthier, and more honest. Love no longer grows from fear. It grows from freedom. Friendships deepen when they're not born out of loneliness, but genuine joy. When you truly enjoy someone's company, not because you're trying to escape your own, the bond becomes real. No pressure, no pretending, just presence. Work becomes more fulfilling when you're not chasing praise. You're not working to impress or prove your worth. You're doing good work because it matters, because it reflects your values, your character, your craft. And life becomes more meaningful when you're no longer in a constant chase for external approval. Instead of living to be seen, you start living to feel, to grow, to create, to live by what matters to you. So now, here's my challenge for you. Become dangerous. Not in the way the world fears, but in the way the world needs. Be dangerous because you can't be controlled. Be dangerous because you think for yourself. Because you are whole by yourself. Because you've written your own moral code. Because your strength doesn't come from applause. It comes from within. The world needs more people who can't be bought. More people who can't be manipulated or shamed into silence. More people who are comfortable in their own skin. Who don't run from their thoughts. Who don't beg for attention. who don't need permission to feel worthy. The world needs more people like that. And if this message struck a nerve, the way it once struck me, then I'm asking you to do one simple thing. Share it. You already know who needs to hear this. Someone you care about is still chasing what they've been conditioned to need, instead of building what truly matters. Then, reflect. Ask yourself, what's one belief I've been carrying that I never actually chose? What's one area in my life where I've been chasing validation instead of growing self-respect? Say it out loud. Drop it in the comments. Start the unraveling, because in a world where most people are desperate to fit in, the most powerful act is to learn how to stand alone. So remember, stay calm, stay grounded, stay dangerous,